Welcome into another episode of Hog Roundup. We are back and we are talking all things SEC Media Days. ESPN Arkansas's Tye Richardson joins the show. We break down Arkansas's time at SEC Media Days. Had to wait until Thursday to go ahead for the Razorbacks. And then we zoom out and take a SEC point of view as well. It is all SEC Media Days. It is all football today on the Hog Roundup. Enjoy. All right, joining the Hog Roundup now, you know him well, ESPN Arkansas's Tye Richardson. Tye, we're going to talk a little bit about media days. We're going to start with Arkansas, and then we'll just go SEC-wide and talk about who knows what. But starting with the Razorbacks, we hear from Talon, we hear from Cam Ball, and we hear from Xavier Sorey as well, Coach Pittman there as well. I know you were in Atlanta, so I want to start there. First of all, what was that experience like for you? How much did you enjoy it? And what were some of your main takeaways from Atlanta and the Hogs there?
Third time there. Thought Cam Ball was fantastic. I mean, you think about what he's gone through in the
Yeah,
past few weeks
yeah.
with the passing of his father. His skill set as just a guy to talk with shouldn't be the main thing I think about. But being that, I mean, he wore a medallion, a
Yeah.
pendant of sorts on his chest, and he talked with us in the media. Just he wanted his father to be with him. So I know that was a heavy moment. I know he's probably going to have some moments throughout the season. For anyone that's lost a parent, it's tough, especially at an age like Cam. He's 22, 23 years old. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. So
Mm.
I thought he, from a player standpoint, stood out the most. Not that Talon Green, as starting quarterback, and Xavier Sorey, the best player in your team, didn't have good stuff to say. I just thought Cam was fantastic, like he always is. As far as the coaches, stole the show, not just Thursday, but really throughout the week. He's good, and
Yeah.
he's easy and hard to dislike at the same time, because I like what he brings, but at the same time it ticks me off that he continues to beat Arkansas year in, year out. And Atlanta's cool. I mean, it's an historical city. There are some elements that happened during SEC Media Days, being that Beyonce, the All-Star game, all the festivities,
Mhm.
and you had WWE in town. Probably logistically wasn't the best, but all in all, a good week last week.
Yeah, it was funny to me that it's back-to-back years because remember the Rangers had, right? They had All-Star Weekend last year and
Yep.
media days were in Dallas, so it was 2 years in a row that kind of lined up. There's a lot of different stuff going on there. You brought up both, obviously the players that came, and it's a great point about Cam and just in general. I remember he joked last year, I think in fall camp or something like that, about like I want to be an SEC network personality or something like that. And like I that is there's no joking about that. He has the personality to do whatever he wants, but I mean, just beyond impressive. And again, you know, to step up there and talk about the passing of his dad the way he did, I just thought was incredibly impressive. All
Mhm.
football stuff aside, but getting to the football stuff, what was some of your takeaways from hearing Talon get up there and talk? And obviously, I think the first thing that stuck out to me was a lot was made about, the physical transformation of Talon, putting on a bunch of weight and, being a different guy physically, but also leadership wise. You heard that from Coach Pittman. You heard it from Talon himself. You heard it from Cam about, he is still a lead by example guy, but he is a more vocal leader. And it seems like we're going to get at least maybe a little bit different of a Talon this year, both on the field and the leadership aspect of it as well.
Well, I think he'd have to be. He's going to have to bark out different things to his tight ends and wide receiver room, most of which none of your viewers have any idea about. We were joking today on our show. It's like, okay, can you name this player? And it was Bueller. Like me and Tommy knew who it was, Jacob, but
Yeah.
the audience was just kind of like sitting there, like, who is that? And that's while Talon is very familiar with the guys that are on campus for this
Yeah.
upcoming season. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Year two for him, not only at the quarterback position, but SEC Media Days, Mountain West Media Day. I'm going to
Mhm.
guess it's one day, does not even come close to what's being discussed and talked about during the SEC. Was Taylor going to wind up as a first team or second team or third team or no? So curious to see. Again, the preseason teams and the order of finish are not important. It's where you
Mhm.
wind up at the end of the season. If Arkansas is going to have any chance to be successful this year offensively, Talon's going to have to be in that top 7, top 6 type of category, and maybe even get a voter team for a third team All SEC quarterback.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I mean, a lot's been made of the schedule, right? And I just, it's you can beat it to death, and people are probably tired of
Yep.
talking about it, right? But There's multiple aspects of it. It's impossible to ignore when you're breaking down this team, right? In terms of your expectations of what you're going to get, and then to your point of what you're saying right there of what is going to be required of Talon Green, right? It's not. Last year Talon flashed a lot. We've talked about this in terms of you could see all of the potential and everything that made him so appetizing as a prospect to Bobby Petrino. But at the same time, with the schedule that you have in front of you, you put it well there. You need him to play at an all SEC level. Otherwise, it's the season's not going to go well. And what's interesting about that is we talked about this as well before is there are so many new faces quarterbacks wise in this conference. I don't think it's ridiculous to say that Talon could play himself into conversations like that. Sure, you could have something pop up where, Nuss is fantastic and then Arch is what we're expecting and Lagway has all the tools in the world and he pops and whatever it is. But there is a chance that you get a Talon performance that builds on last year. He ends up being on one of those all SEC teams, and that's going to make the season feel a whole lot different than it would if he turns in the same exact performance he did in 12 games a year ago.
For this year, it's a little different. Week 3 is the biggest thing at Oxford. Ole Miss. I mean, if you win that game, changes the entire outlook of the season as the Oklahoma State game would have done last year. And they were about, I don't know, 75 to 80% away from doing that. And then things fell apart in Stillwater. Talon, the running game got going. If you remember, whether it's Jaquindon, Talon, it really got set up and was complex for Oklahoma State's defense in that game. What you're hoping is that running game helps him out initially so he can get some chemistry, get some stuff with the wide receivers going, and then they continue to flourish down the stretch. Because like you said, if Arkansas is going to amount to anything this year in 2025, Talon is going to have to be a better quarterback, and he is probably going to be better. I'm not worried about his skill set and improvement under Bobby Petrino in year 2. I'm worried about the regression that you'll see from the wide receiver group, not based on guys getting worse, but just the talent level from last year to this year. Hoping I'm wrong about that, but it remains to be seen, Jacob.
Yeah, it's just when you lose that much, you're asking a lot in terms of saying, "Hey, I'm going to replace everything that came through." I'm buying myself time because I wanted to pull up the receiving stats in here somewhere. But it's we've talked about it before. It's whatever it is, 6 out of your 7 receivers, top receivers from a year ago, right? You are asking a lot. I don't know if that's exactly right, but it's something like that, right?
And I think Andreas Poshka is the only one to catch a touchdown from last year's team.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. So, or if you go through here, I got it pulled up. The receptions, right? Armstrong, 78 receptions gone. Isaiah Satania, 37 receptions gone. Taslaw, 28 gone. Luke has gone. Rashad Dubinion gone. Tyrone Broden gone. Jaquindon Jackson gone. Jordan Anthony gone. You got to get to number 9 and Rodney Hill. So it was worse than I thought. It wasn't 6 7.
Yeah.
It was your top 8, right? And we've talked about that extensively, but I think it's a great point in terms of you better get something from the run game because you're going to have to figure out what this receiver group looks like. And a receiver group that on top of that, you lose Ismail Cece, who was, projecting well and a guy that they felt really confident about as well. So you're going to learn very quick, very fast what this offense looks like. It's going to need to be a more balanced attack. And the other aspect with the schedule, not to just keep hitting it over and over again, is, if you want to nitpick and say, what did we not see from Talon Green last year? This is going to be an entirely different road schedule than the one he faced a year ago. And he was by no stretch did he struggle on the road. I thought he played well against Oklahoma State. I think he played well against Auburn. He, lit up the stat sheet against Mississippi State, if you want to count that, right? But when you talk about the type of atmospheres he's going to face this year, it's just a different animal when you're talking about Tennessee, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and you just keep going down the list. It is environments and atmospheres that are they top the entire list in the entire country. It'll be interesting to see if that has an effect or if it's just the same old Taylor.
And you think about the road games that you mentioned. So I would put him above Austin Simmons right now, just because we haven't seen a lot from Simmons outside, I guess, a little bit in that Georgia game, maybe a blowout or 2 for Ole Miss.
Good.
Yeah. Then you fast forward. That is true. I want to see it in a full SEC game the week before in Lexington, and then the pressure at home. Then you go to Joey Aguilar in Knoxville. I know that Tennessee fans are excited about him, what that could be like, but we don't know about him. He's an unknown. So you got 2 unknowns.
Yep.
You've seen a little glimpses either at App State or also in an Ole Miss uniform. Then it moves to the real tough stuff. He's not better than Nussmeier. Taylor Green's not Nussmeier. I know he was ranked by the media as the second best quarterback. That's the best quarterback in the SEC. I don't think it's
Okay.
close. And then you have the conundrum of Arch Manning, which I don't buy him as the third team All SEC quarterback yet. He might be that by the end of the season, but for the media to put him there, that's more of, in my opinion, just a name. Now, again, he's got the pedigree from his grandfather and his two uncles. Cooper was a heck of a football player as well before obviously, extenuating circumstances took him out
Yeah.
of college and whatever else. But I think for Taylor Green, again, you're not when you go on the road outside of going to Baton Rouge and maybe Austin. I'd put him above the other two.
Yeah.
Maybe those guys end up being world beaters, and I'm proven wrong here months later. But from an atmosphere standpoint, you're like you're talking about a little different than going to a lackluster Jordan Stadium, which is what it was last year. Missouri at the end of the year, which we know is not a great SEC atmosphere.
Mhm.
Mississippi State was awful
Yeah,
last
it was bad. It
season,
was bad.
and it's just it's a different element. And then A&M and Jerry World's just a different thing, which is a fun atmosphere, but you don't have to worry about going to College Station this year.
Yeah, it's a different road schedule for sure. I was laughing in the middle there because I always think of opportunities to clip things no context. And you
Oh
saying,
gosh.
Arch Manning's just a name. That might be one I have to go back.
No,
Clip
I
no
don't need
context there.
Archie came on our show a couple weeks ago. I don't need him yelling at me. He was great. But it is like that
Yeah, I hear you.
he's so unproven, Jacob.
Yeah.
And I don't wish anything ill will on him or
Mhm.
anything, but like and he's the one that's like, yeah, don't
Yeah.
I have something to prove. And I'm paraphrasing what he said in these different interviews, whether it's Marty Smith or SEC Media Days. But he's like, chill on the hype train. Like, I've
Yeah.
got to actually do something in the Southeastern Conference before you give me these accolades and awards when it comes to what he's accomplished in the in the SEC.
Yeah, I that's just a tangent. We can get to that in a second when we start talking SEC in general. But I've actually been incredibly impressed with the way he's handled all that and
Yeah.
just said, like he's just been honest and been like, I haven't done anything to deserve all that. But I think it's a good way to tie it all together with you going through those quarterbacks because that's exactly what we talked about off the rip of there is a window here. You don't know
Yeah.
what Gunnar Stockton, what Arch Manning, what DJ Lagway, what Austin Sim. It is the entire league. It feels like outside of, I mean, I guess you can say Sellers and Nussmeier. I know what those guys are, but outside of that, it's question marks across the board. And there's a window, maybe there for Talon, and it's going to have to be if Arkansas has success. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at the SEC as a whole. First, a quick break and a message from our sponsors. All right, back here on the Hog Roundup, talking Arkansas and SEC Media Days. Ty, let's zoom out a little bit and go SEC in general. Just storylines you had your eye on, being in Atlanta for Media Days. Conference wide, what were you looking at? What did you learn this past week?
Well, it's the Nick Saban dynamic when Greg
Yeah,
McElroy brought up initially during the week that he was told by someone that he trusted that not to rule out Nick Saban coaching. Then he asked Paul Feinbaum about it. Kristen Saban, Nick's daughter, has since
yeah,
clarified things. And McElroy, again, he did not. I think what the misnomer out there was Greg McElroy said his coach is coming back. It's not what he said. And so that was misconstrued and tossed out in different ways. That's up there. The dynamic between the Big Ten and the SEC, I think, is interesting with the college football playoff and just everything going on that's entangled there. I also think the transfer portal. You heard John Calipari talk about it. You heard the other coaches in the league talk about it. They don't mind. I don't think a player being able to transfer without penalty. It's when a kid is on his third, fourth, and fifth school, not just in college football, but any sport for that
hmm
matter, that I think coaches are fed up. That's where they like to see some more regulation. I think that's another storyline that played out this past week as well.
yeah. I think you're going to continue to see momentum for that build, just from the standpoint that I can't remember who I was listening to, but they asked the question. They were like, "We can approach this from 19 million different angles," and finally they were like, "But what it boils down to is who does this benefit?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "Don't tell me the players. Like sure, you can make a little bit more money here, but if your Cal was the one who said it on Rothstein's podcast, not to just take us down a whole different direction." But he asked Rothstein, he was like, "Hey, if somebody's four schools in 4 years, are they graduating?" I was like, No, right? And so like you think about it, just it's something that we got to get a grasp on. And it was obviously it came up a lot during media days just because we got to figure this out in terms of where everything's going. And when you talk about something as high profile as SEC football, that's going to be at the forefront of it.
Yeah, no question. I was thinking about when you're talking about it's a kid graduating. I had a hard enough time trying to figure out if my credits were going to transfer going from accounting to broadcast journalism. But I think student athletes, especially high profile D1 football guys, it's a little bit easier for them to figure things out.
Little tad bit easier.
Yeah,
There's different avenues, you know what I
just a
mean?
little.
Outside of Arkansas, when you were looking at teams, who did you come away with, impressed by? It is talking season for a reason. Everybody looks good at this point, but were there any teams, players, yeah, that you came away saying, "Hey, man, I'm going to keep my eye on them come this season"?
I don't think Diego Pavia is backing down from anything he said in the offseason.
Yeah,
I
he's
don't know if
rolling.
that's impressive or stupid, but him and his guys are primed up, geared up for ready the season, except they're not going to sneak up on Alabama. They're not going to
No.
sneak up on Tennessee. I know they got beat by the Vols last year, but I mean, that's the thing about being the underdog. Like if you
Hmm.
run your mouth, you're not really the underdog anymore, especially heading into some of these revenge games that they were able to beat last year. So I think him standing out a little bit. And I mentioned Drink earlier. Drink always has something to
Yeah.
say. It's frustrating as a guy that's covered and loved Arkansas my entire life, that this dude is got Arkansas roots and continues to kick
Hmm.
the Razorbacks' tail. So I would say, player wise, it's Pavia. Coach wise, it was Drink, and I don't even know if it was close.
Yeah, he his opening statement was an all timer there in terms of
Yeah.
what types of questions he's going to take and all the above. Not to just rope everything back to what we were talking about initially, but Missouri is they're a fascinating team if you're looking at it from an SEC standpoint. Of they play just a cakewalk compared to what Arkansas
Yep.
plays and a couple other teams play, and so as a result, lots of people saying, "Hey, is this a team where you could get some value here in terms of maybe to make the SEC championship game or to win 10 games or to make the college football playoff because of that schedule?" And it's they're in the same kind of boat that all of these other programs seem to be, where I think Bo Perbula is going to be really good. He comes in from Penn State, really high recruiting pedigree. He sat behind Drew Aller for a couple of years. But Ty, not to just keep hammering it over and over and over again, but we don't know, right? Bo Perbula comes in and he looked really good when I think he had to come in against Wisconsin, I want to say, for Penn State. And he just finally said, I've waited long enough. I got to go find an opportunity. But we don't know with a guy like that. Missouri has a really easy schedule, but it's still an unknown at the quarterback position.
I would take, I don't know if I would take the last one as a college football playoff. I guess if you're in the SEC championship, you're going to the college
Yeah.
football playoff. But based on schedule alone, I'd take the 9 or 10 wins. I mean, Missouri, think about their success last season. You think about South Carolina, Alabama, kind of Ole Miss, kind of all near the top in that same front. It is one of those things. The SEC only got three teams into college football playoff last year. If they are only able to get in three this year, I think Greg Sankey and his staff are going to have to push for a 9-game SEC schedule.
Yeah.
At least I think that's what they're thinking. I hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I think it's going to be in that situation. So Missouri, again, regardless of how you feel about their new quarterback and everything else on the roster, and you're gonna have to remind me on their running back. That's one of the best, if not the best, in the Southeastern Conference. But that's going to be a team that
Transfer guy, right?
yeah, if I remember
Yeah.
that right, that's going to be a team. Once again, Arkansas finds itself at the end of the season having to claw tooth and nail to beat them. And I mean, I'm not going to bet on Arkansas to win that game. I'll tell you that much. I might bet on Missouri to win 9 or 10. I ain't betting on Arkansas to win that game.
Yeah, I'm not here to tell you what to do with your money, but the reason why I brought that up was that they're sitting somewhere crazy in terms of SEC championship odds, where they're plus 5,000, right? And I'm not going to tell you that
Wow.
Missouri. That's so. This is where I'm going with this, not to just take us down a tangent. Is my thought process is with a schedule that easy and the way the conference cannibalized itself last year, you don't have any standout teams. All of a sudden, it could be the same situation where a two-loss team in the SEC could make the championship. And at that point, you have a plus 5,000 team sitting going to Atlanta as maybe a 9.5 point dog. You either ride with that or you have yourself an easy hedge. I'm not telling you what to do, not rooting for it either. I'm just saying something to
That
think
is
about.
no, that I think a lot. I think there's going to be some sharp bettors out there that will have that same philosophy, that same style of thinking. So I don't think that's a terrible way to look at things this season. You could think Texas, LSU, Alabama, Georgia are all more talented. But when you look at what's on their schedule
Mhm.
relative to what
That's
Missouri has to face, that's why you lean on the
that's
Tigers. I don't blame you one bit, Jacob.
that's what it is. I'm just saying, and because I said that, I'm sure they'll start 0-4, and Purbuell will get benched and all the above. I'm just saying, something to
That'd be
look for.
nice. That'd be nice.
Wouldn't be bad. Finally get a win off the end of the season for the Razorbacks there. But regardless, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up SEC Media Day thoughts. One more break. Back here on the Hog Roundup, wrapping up shop. Tye Richardson and Jacob Morris with you. Tye, we are, 5-6 weeks away from the season. We are through talking season, however you want to put it. So I'll just leave it general here as we wrap up. You leave Atlanta, you're starting to get your mind right for the college football season. It can be Arkansas, it can be SEC related. What is a storyline, something you're looking forward to this season now that you can't wait to get this thing going? What are you looking
Well,
at college football wise?
Well, it's one of the last questions that was asked at SEC Media Days. Eli Drinkwitz, when asked about the SEC trying to get back on
Yeah.
top, he alluded to the draft picks. He alluded to the previous success prior to Michigan and Ohio State. But that's what I'm looking at. Can the SEC win a national championship and get back to where they belong? It's the best conference in college football. I think logical people would argue that they still are, but the Big Ten could say, well, we've got the last
Last
two
two.
national champions,
Yeah.
and we've gone through the SEC to get it. So it's hard to dispute that, at least from that standpoint, from the Big Ten. So that would be up there. I think like what happens future wise in the sport. We mentioned the transfer portal
Mhm.
earlier. Does that get whittled down? Do we just see one portal window?
Yeah.
Coaches were like, all right, we get through spring ball, and then there's more portal stuff. So how do we get rid of that? How do we nix that? College football playoff. What does that look like? We had a chance to catch up with Rich Clark, who's the
Mhm.
head of the college football playoff, the executive director, I think is his title. He didn't rule really anything off the table. So I think there's like we have all these ideas and things that are popping in our head. When are they actually going to get
Mhm.
finalized and solidified for not just 2026, but beyond that?
Yeah, it's the big question facing everything, and
Mhm.
I mean, people love to disagree about all things, but this is, I mean, I don't think you can find two people, depending on conference affiliation, or in the same ballpark in terms of what they think this thing should look like moving forward. But regardless, a lot to be excited about. We will be back next week to talk more college football, what we're excited about the college football season. We're gonna do some win totals moving forward.
Let's
I'm gonna
go.
make Ty give me some predictions, so look forward to that in the next week. But that's all the time we have on this week's Hog Roundup. That is Tye Richardson. I am Jacob Moore saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week.